Before we had our general elections, most of the opinion polls had indicated that Raila was having 52% and Ruto was having 47%. But when the results were called, it was different. Now, this is my reaction, or this is my observation as to what may have happened. Those groups were not wrong, those groups were right. But the facts that I remember the lady Ruth was with David Ndii in a local station on which David Ndii never objected to the results. He only pointed up one thing. He said that he was the first person to start a public opinion thing in the country. So he confronted Madam Ruth and asked her if I said that because she said that her sample study was covered throughout. But David Ndii pointed out that 30% of the respondents were people of ordinary level, that is Form 4 education. So 30% of the respondents were of A level and above. And he pointed out that the average national education was 10%. What this means is that most of these public opinion polls were contacting people who were more educated, 3 times more than an average. This means that it reflected intellectuals, but it did not reflect those people who are below O level. I used to work for the special branch. I know how Kenyans react. When a stranger comes to your door and he or she wants to know your stand on various things, it is very ordinary for Kenyans to answer you not what you want to hear, but what they think you want to hear. Or, usually they think that by telling the truth, they may land into problems. So when you're asking and maybe you look like somebody from a certain region or whatever, then they will answer you according to what they think that people from the region or people from the background that you have in common. I used to work for the Kenyan intelligence when it was known as Special Branch. I remember we had very many by-elections and a few general elections. During those elections, we used to be asked by the national office to carry out a public opinion. We used to carry it out and we could forward the recommendation. There is only one election where we were wrong. And Nyati really was hard on us. But it so happened that Peter Kibiego Lagat, the then district commissioner for Kapenguri and West Pokot, did not want a certain candidate. So there was massive election rigging, massive open rigging. There is a risk of carrying out a public there is a risk of carrying out opinion polls a few days to elections. One, there is the negative and then there is the positive. The negative is that yes, a certain candidate may be leading, but if you show that he is leading, it tends to make some voters not turn up. Why should we vote when our candidate is already losing or winning? On the other side, it makes the candidate turnout to be a bit higher because of, it makes turnout to be higher because some people, especially those of a candidate who is losing, to turn up in large numbers so that they make their candidate win. So it is not good, in brief, it is not good to announce that so-and-so is leading because it may affect the outcome. You will find that those people who are reacting are usually people with phones. A good number of people who respond have got phones, and many Kenyans do not have phones, or they are not middle-aged. I mean middle-aged, middle class, such things. Why am I saying so? Middle-age and people like Buruburu people, middle class, these are people who don't vote. These are remote control people, TV remote control. These are people who most of the times are bitter with life. You'll find they're blaming this, blaming that. They will say, I will not vote for so-and-so. And on the election day, they'll see no need of waking up at 5 or even 4 to go and line up. They'll wake up, buy a few juices or even alcohol, take the TV remote and watch as people vote. And once a person has been elected, these are the people who will react and say, money has been poured, there is rigging, there is whatever. On one hand, this is the person who expressed his or her views to the opinion poll. But when it came to election, he didn't turn up. And he's on social media, he's very abusive. He's saying how things were happening, how elections were stolen, how our agents were bought. But if you check his or her finger, mostly his, you'll find that he did not vote. I observed and I explained to a few people during the 2010 constitutional change. Some of this public opinion are financed by people with a certain aim. When the election of 2007 settled, they started carrying out public opinion on who is likely to win an election. And I remember Nani's name, Mwai Kibaki's name, was mentioned a few occasions. And Mwai Kibaki people complained. They said that constitutionally, he had already been sworn in twice. They had already been sworn in twice, and they saw no way that he could be. So they requested that his name be deleted from that. And if you, of those who can remember those days, they'll remember that when they started, the person who was leading was Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka. And it was so so meticulously done that just before there was a meeting in Naivasha where PNU people were for presidential system of government. On the other hand, the ODM people were for the Westminster type of government. The PNU people are the ones who financed for the public opinion polls up to the Naivasha meeting. I remember very well, we had the Standard newspaper, which on front page said that Raila makes a U-turn. Delegates were in Naivasha. They were ready to vote, and everything they had agreed except one thing. They had not agreed to whether it will be Westminster or the American presidential system. But on that day, the public opinion showed that Raila, in a public opinion, he had 50%. And people like James Orengo and others, or Anyang' Nyong'o and others, went and saw Raila, and they told him the pros and cons of Westminster. In Westminster, after every 6 months, the parliament could pass a vote of no confidence in the prime minister. But in the presidential election, once you are sworn in, people had to persevere for 5 years, whether they like it or not, unless, of course, there is impeachment. So Raila was convinced that since the whole public was having 50%, he was told that we only need to look for one vote to tip up and will be the president for 5 years. That is the reason why Raila changed his mind from Westminster to presidential. And that is my few words on opinion polls.